Hi, I'm Zach Gray. The 21st movie in 2017 that I saw was The Great Wall. It was directed by Yimou Zhang and it stars Matt Damon, Zhang Chen, Pedro Pascal, and Willem Dafoe. It's about a group of European mercenaries that are traveling across China during the Song Dynasty to find black powder. They run up against the Great Wall of China and they discover that the Chinese soldiers are fighting monsters. When I first saw the trailers for this movie back in 2016, when this originally had a release date for 2016, I was not going to see this movie. I did not make the same pledge in 2016 to see all the movies, and I skipped ones that I didn't think looked interesting, and this would have been skipped because I did not think this movie looked interesting. I'm not the biggest Matt Damon fan. I think he's okay, and I've liked some of his movies, but I'm not like head over heels for him like a lot of people are. I didn't think that the visual effects looked that interesting, which kind of sells a lot of this type of movie. You want your monsters to look cool in a monster action movie because that's really a lot of what you're selling your movie on. What I did think was interesting was that it was the highest budget Chinese production ever, which is always interesting, but overall I didn't think that this looked like a very good movie. And once I finally saw it, I found that I was correct. It's not a very good movie. One of the biggest downsides to this movie is that it's boring. After the first half an hour where they kind of introduce everything that's going on, there's not much interesting that goes on for the rest of the movie, especially since the plot is super formulaic. It has a rigid 3-act structure that it will not break under any circumstances, which is fine because a lot of movies are like that, but it really makes this story seem boring because of how inevitable everything feels. The monsters, as you've probably seen, do not look that good. And the biggest problem is with these monsters not looking good is that the queen, the main monster that's in charge of all the other monsters, barely looks different than the rest. They didn't really spend much time with her visual design to make her look interesting, to make her look different, to make her look cool in any particular way. And I know it's dumb to say that a part of a movie didn't look cool, but this whole movie cares about how cool it is. Every regiment of the Chinese army wears different colors. The blue army uses acrobatics to jump off the wall and fight monsters. The black ones run along the side of the wall to stab the monsters in the eyes. This movie wants to be really cool, and there are parts that are really cool, but the general aesthetic of the movie doesn't tie itself together in a very interesting way. Luckily, the movie's only an hour and 45 minutes, so it doesn't overstay its welcome at all, but it's just... It was a chore to sit through. And Matt Damon ended up being one of the least interesting parts of the movie. His acting isn't terrible, but he's so generic and he's trying so hard to look odd that he really doesn't bring much interesting to the table. Also, the biggest criticism that a lot of people had for this movie before it came out was they were afraid that it was going to fall into the general white savior archetype, where everybody in the movie is Chinese, except for the main character who saves the day through sheer force of will and whiteness. And for most of this movie, it doesn't fall into that archetype. However, near the end, without spoiling anything, it kind of falls back on those tropes, and it's much worse because of it. It really made the ending, which looked the coolest visually, kind of fall flat on its face. Overall, I don't think this movie did anything interesting. I don't think it looks good. I don't think the acting is anything to write home about. I don't think that the story is interesting, and the action, while it has a couple of cool parts, you can find better action pretty much anywhere at this point. So overall, I would not recommend this movie to anyone unless you just really want to watch a movie that takes place at the Great Wall of China.